to American Legions, going to Rotary clubs, talking about the program. A great marketing strategy that we have employed, and it's working. We also, again, I talked about a couple of our non-governmental organizations that work closely with our survivors and us. You know, you talk about the Gold Star organizations. They're there for us. We have to get closer relationships with them. The Patriot Guard, they're always there for our survivors. We must get closer relationships so they can communicate with us, we can communicate with them, and we can link them to our survivors. We can link them to our survivors. We're going, as Donna Egerman always likes to say, General, when she gets down, she comes to my office and she says, General, show me that video clip again. I say, what clip, Donna? The one about the airplane. She said, because things didn't go right today, and I want to look at that video that shows a company building a plane as it flies. Some of you may have seen it on the internet a couple of years ago. But guess what? We're real proud of that airplane that we're building. We're very proud of it. We think we got the right people on board, and they're doing great things. I got one slide. This is one of the parts of our marketing effort that we're putting out, because when I talked to some of the survivors, they said, well, General, you know, I'd love to go to get some of those great outreach services. But man, it's hard getting on your installation. So we're going to have this decal distributed over the upcoming months to our survivors, allow them to put it on their vehicles so that when they come through our great installations around the world, our Army installations for now, the Guard will know what they have experienced. They will appreciate their loss, and they'll help celebrate the service of their great soldier. So as you well, I've gone on much too long, but hey, when I get with the network, hey, I get carried away, and I make no apologies, because they deserve every second. Have a great day.
Our next speaker is going to help us understand about the action at the garrison level when it comes to survivor outreach services. And I'd like you to please welcome Colonel Robert McLaughlin, the garrison commander at Fort Carson.
It's a pleasure to be here with you today as I represent garrison commanders from across the Army in delivering survivor outreach services. That's all except for Colonel Tommy Britton from Fort Lewis. Give me the next slide, please. What I'm going to talk about is programs at the garrison level and how they work to meet the need, and a little bit about my experiences on some of the topics listed there, in which I'm very proud of, and I know other garrison commanders in the room are doing the same across the Army. Give me the next slide. I'm going to give you some information, but I think primarily what it's about is what I'm calling the 4 Ps. Passion, purpose, partners, and in my case, a place to deliver the services. The passion starts from the top. It starts with General Lynch. I had an opportunity about a year ago to send some of my survivors at Fort Carson to AFAP. I thought that I was starting to deliver a good program with survivor outreach services. General Lynch invited the survivors into his office and said, tell me, what can I do to help you at Fort Carson? So like good survivors who care, they told General Lynch all about what he could do to help Fort Carson, and I got a little push along the way. So, Sarah, thanks to your husband for helping me out. And passion from those across the Army, passion from survivors, passion from support groups, from Bonnie, from Deb, from countless others that deliver passion to a program. And of course, the partners across the Colorado Springs area and the partners that I've experienced at the national level to help us deliver survivor outreach services. And I think the strength of our program is survivors helping survivors along with others that do the same. Next slide, please. What I want to share with you is a charter. This charter was born about a year ago from me and my team at Fort Carson. It's a charter that was written by survivors, for survivors, and others. Connection to the military community was critical, and that's what survivors told me. Connection with partners in the community. For those survivors who don't necessarily want to reach back to the military right away, they've got partners in the community that are willing to help until they're ready to reach back to the military community. Caring and committed attitude. Two parts there. Survivor Outreach Services starts with casualty notification and continues through the life of a survivor. And that's important as I talk to everybody about our product. The other thing that's critical, and survivors have told me this, is connection to the unit. Not only do we have a service that provides caring attitude, but we need to do better, and General Jones mentioned it, on connecting to units. So we're striving to make sure that our unit representation is connected to survivors throughout their lifetime, whether their loved one was lost 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or even in Vietnam, or before that, so that survivors are connected to the units and to Survivor Outreach Services. And I've talked to many that are proud to deliver. Sensitivity is another critical piece of this. General Jones talked about the sticker coming into installations. We're committed on a military installation, which indeed is a sanctuary, that survivors that come into the gates of that installation, and in my case, Fort Carson, are treated appropriately. I've heard countless stories of some making mistakes and not doing the right thing. We're committed through our process of Survivor Outreach Services to make sure that everybody who touches the life of a survivor understands that they do the right thing, whether they be the gate guard that might say something wrong, or whether they're being a counselor, so they understand. So we're committed to make sure that we have a caring and passionate attitude and that we indeed have sensitivity. The links to long-term care. This is an enduring program. General Jones has told me many times, as you continue to deliver this, it is enduring, and it's here to stay for everybody with our partners. Give me the next slide. You'll see different colors on this slide, and what I'd like to show you here is first the connection between the Survivor Outreach Service long-term care and the Casualty Assistance Office. At my level, both of those departments work for the garrison commander, whether it's the Department of Human Resources or Survivor Outreach Services under Army Community Services. The key to success is to make sure that both are working together. From the time a casualty assistance officer is there to notify, and a casualty notification officer, to the time a survivor goes into long-term care for Survivor Outreach Services. It's not for us to decide. It's for survivors to decide. What I have learned in bringing these two groups together is that we must be a team. The Director of Human Services and Army Community Services work together to provide survivor outreach services. I'm proud to report to you today that, at least in my case, and I believe across the Army, that we're making strides to make that better so there's no gaps. There's been a lot of discussion about chaplain involvement. I will tell you, and you know, that chaplains are critical. We need to continue to make sure our spiritual leaders are linked to Survivor Outreach Services, that our survivors know that they have a spiritual leader that cares, and that there's a spiritual leader that's involved in all aspects. One of the other critical things as we link units to Survivor Outreach Services is our FRSAs, those who are linked to the units, that our FRSAs are linked to Survivor Outreach Services. I found countless times when the unit FRSA at the battalion level needs to come and understand what the programs are doing. I'm happy to report to you today that as I look across the board, we're getting a lot better in connecting those who are directly involved in the unit with those who are directly involved with Survivor Outreach Services. And then, of course, in the yellow there, I think it's yellow, or orange, are many partners in the community, partners that help, outreach coordinators. We're all linked to do the right thing. I'm especially proud of our relationship with TAPS at Fort Carson as we continue this endeavor together, and the other survivor services that help us in the community. And then the last part, which might even be the most important part, is the volunteers. Volunteers, whether they be survivors or not, the passion that they bring to the program, and I've seen it in the last year, has been incredible. I'll tell you, since we started our Fallen Heroes Family Center, which we just commissioned last week, volunteers have come out of the woodwork to help us with this program. So it's partnership, it's volunteers, it's spiritual leaders, it's the Garrison team coming together to make it all work, to provide for survivors for an enduring program. The many colors of this chart show that there are many who care and that there are many pieces to the puzzle that come together to make this work. Can I have the next slide? Another critical part that I have learned in my experience is how we connect. Each garrison has a region for survivor outreach services. I have a 5-state region: Fort Carson, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Utah. In each of those states, there's a reserve and guard component leader to survivor outreach services. Many of the survivors that I talked to last night are linked to the reserve and guard SOS programs. It's critical that we do our best across the Army in our regions to make sure that our survivors are linked, if it's a guard or a reserve unit. In my case, in the 5-state region, that we're linked with those who provide this service. I'm happy to tell you today that we are, that the Survivor Outreach Service Reserve and Guard component leaders meet with my team routinely to make sure that we get it right. Are we perfect at this point? We're certainly not, but we're going to continue to get better. That's part of the passion that I see out there with these people helping deliver this program. To the bottom right is kind of a look at my team. It's passionate people across the Army that have these positions to deliver this service. I call these guys the Super Friends. I think as we continue our program, it's the passion and caring of this team that includes survivors that helps deliver this program for our survivors across the Army. We're going to continue to grow this capability. We're going to continue to look not just geographically, but anybody, in my case, that's linked to Fort Carson, wherever they live in the world, that they can be linked, even if they're not in the 5-state area. Currently, since I'm in a town that has Air Force and Navy, we're also linked to their survivors, so that they have a home on the sanctuary, in my case, that is Fort Carson in the Fallen Heroes Family Center. Can I have the next slide? I'd like to share with you kind of an understanding of some milestones that I have experienced as a garrison commander in bringing the program to fruition over the last 2 years. In my case, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our building, our Fallen Heroes Family Center, and what that means to survivors in the program. A passionate program with a place to execute that program means so much. Many installations currently don't have a facility to do this permanently, but that's okay, because the passion in the program will speak for itself. In my case, I think bringing it into a place that unites people helps. What I've seen since we've commissioned the Fallen Heroes Family Center is synergy, people coming together with a place to deliver what I call a labor of love. About March last year, we started to operate our Survivor Outreach Service Council. I also list this as a best practice. We meet monthly with survivors, with care providers, with spiritual leaders, with those in the community that want to help. I found that getting together with this group provides synergy to help this program along the way, something that we're going to continue to do. We need to hear from those who are passionate about the program. We need to continue to hear from survivors to make this right. And to spread it across the installations, to make sure that the chain of command understands the importance of survivor outreach service is also critical in building compassion to the program. I think as we gain traction at Fort Carson, when we were able to commission our building just last week, the Fallen Heroes Family Center, with a dedication ceremony, and I'll show you what that is. It continued to bring us traction in the program. Go to the next slide. What I want to show you here is our grand opening of our Fallen Heroes Family Center. This indeed was a labor of love from the greater Colorado Springs community. You've seen Extreme Home Makeover on Sunday nights with Ty Pennington. This was a reenactment of that show every day. Every day I had contractors from across the Colorado Springs area wanting to do more, wanting to help. Finally, it built up to a frenzy in the last couple of days in which they all came out of the woodwork to work around the clock so that we could open this center before the 4th Infantry Division deployed to Iraq. Synergy was gained as we left a group of soldiers to deploy, knowing that we had a facility that was going to continue to care for survivors. The goodness for me at Fort Carson is where we built the facility, we also have the Family Readiness Center, and we're also going to build a Child Development Center. So in the bottom right there, you see what I'm calling a campus-type atmosphere, where in the end, in the next 5 months, we'll have our Survivor Outreach Service Fallen Heroes Family Center, which is just like a home. Those of you who've been out to see it, it's just like somebody's home inside. Well, a block away is the Family Readiness Center with big conference rooms, so the support groups that want to execute meetings to support survivors can do that. And then in the end will be a Child Development Center for daycare for children to help out in the campus environment. Next slide. A little bit about what the center does. It's a building that's been refurbished on the inside with this labor of love. It's just like a home. It's an environment where I believe survivors will be able to call their home on the sanctuary, in my case, that's Fort Carson, and continue to build a foundation of love and caring for them. So what I told the group at Fort Carson last week is it's just a beginning. It's just a beginning to continue to deliver this program at a place where passionate people will be. Whether you're connected to Fort Carson by geography, whether you're in the 5-state region, if you're Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines and want a home, you've got a home on a military installation in the Front Range area, something that will continue to grow and provide this program. What I want to talk to you about now is some what I think are best practices that help the program along the way. I already mentioned the council. Bringing people together on a routine basis that truly care or that have been affected by loss is a powerful thing. Something that keeps me grounded, something that keeps me driven to make it right. Every month we come together to discuss how to make the program better, something we will sustain. As a matter of fact, I look forward to our next meeting on Monday to continue to look at how we can make our home better. We have a young man named Eric. He's our financial consultant. If those of you have seen Wall Street, I call him Gordon Gecko because he looks just like Gordon with the suspenders on. He's a financial wizard. He helps survivors from across the region deal with financial needs. He puts out his Mad Minute monthly, and I get nothing but positive feedback. Another passionate guy who knew nothing of survivors until he joined the program and has really taken on a burden of his own to help. CAO and CNO training. Every installation does it. I go to speak at every training that we do for our casualty assistance and casualty notification officers. Every time we brief them, survivors come. Survivors come to talk to them about the sensitivity. Suicide survivors come to talk to the CAOs and CNOs about the special burden of suicide and how they need to help. Care teams include survivors, because survivors have told me that they want to talk to a survivor. So our survivors in the Colorado Springs and Front Range area have volunteered to be part of care teams that help survivors in their moment of need, from beginning to long-term care. Many of the fallen heroes' fathers have told me, what do I have? Everything's for the missus. I want something too. So we started a fathers group for fallen heroes' fathers, which we're getting momentum on. And then lastly, there were some comments about our children of our fallen heroes. We're continuing to do things not just with survivors, but in our school districts to help our kids deal with stress. General Casey talked about resiliency, and it's critical to link the two. It's critical to help survivors, and it's critical to help those who are in times of need and crisis. So our team is committed to helping our kids out along the way. At every council that we do, we make sure that we do special things for our children of the fallen, and we're going to continue to build resiliency in kids through those who are affected by military schools. Okay, I think this is my last slide. A little bit about the way ahead and how I see it as garrison commanders across the Army deliver this program. Continuing to build the partnership with those who care is critical. I remember as we were getting the program started at Fort Carson, many of the local support groups were concerned that if we were going to start this program inside of Fort Carson, could we provide the passion that they did outside of Fort Carson? I assured them then, and I continue to assure them, that we will work as partners to ensure that nobody falls through the cracks. That if a family wants to be cared for on the installation, the sanctuary that's a military installation, they can do that. If they don't want to do that and want to work with a support group off the installation, they can do that too, or both. I'm proud to say that we have places in our Survivor Outreach Service, Fallen Heroes Family Center, for TAPS. We're glued together at the hip on how we're doing business. We have spaces in there and conference rooms for all the outreach groups in the community that want to help our survivors. The partnership, the P in partnership is critical as we go forward. We're going to continue to conduct classes. I talked about sensitivity. That's a critical part to make sure all those who touch survivors on Fort Carson and other installations understand the sensitivities involved. We're going to continue to learn about grief. There's so many groups out there that want to help. As I go around and meet people, as I did last night, and continue to meet people today, invite them to come to my installation to help those in need, and we're going to continue to do that. The partnership with our Casualty Assistance and Casualty Notification Office and those who do that is a big part of going forward to make sure that we have that link from a time of the casualty forever. That Survivor Outreach Services covers the span of the crisis and continued care and compassion. And then probably the last part is to make sure that we do the right memorials and remembrances at every level so that our families are cared for. It's truly a partnership between units. It's a partnership with those who work on the garrison team, and it's a partnership with those in the community that care about survivors. So I'll conclude by saying thank you. Thanks to survivors that help survivors. Thanks to everybody that cares for survivors. I am, like all garrison commanders across the Army, committed to deliver this program and get better and better along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel McLaughlin, for giving us a perspective of the care and support for survivors at Fort Carson. Our next presenter will be Ms. Cynthia Jones, who is a special assistant to Senator Mary Landrieu, and she will provide us with a legislative update relevant to survivors.
Good afternoon. I'll be very brief. And I want to let you know that I'm Senator Landrieu's military legislative assistant, and I handle all of our defense, veterans, and foreign policy appropriations, as well as legislation. But I am a military wife, an Army wife of 24 years, and a widow of 6. And that's really why the senator hired me, and that's why I was asked to come and speak today, because I think I'm the only one on the Hill in that situation. And I could go down a list. There are currently about 11 legislative issues in front of Congress right now that affect survivors, most importantly the SBP DIC offset. But you can get that information on thomas.gov from other websites. What I'd like to share very quickly is how you can affect legislation, how you can ask for things in the right way so they actually make a difference. And one of the key things, and Nicole mentioned that, is the most important thing for people to understand is even though the Army tells us we're family, and we want to stay family, legally we are not family. So if you write legislation with family in it and not survivors, you've cut out a whole swath in one fell swoop. And so that's very important, and when you're going to your senators, when you're going to your representatives, when you have people write legislation, to make sure that they understand the Hill has a lot of really smart people, but the majority of them are young. I'm the mom in the office because all of them are young enough to be my children. And they don't understand. They don't get it. They don't see the big picture. They don't understand that if you write, something and you think of family, that you're leaving out the survivors, the children, the siblings, the parents, a lot of stuff. And so what we waste a lot of time doing, as people have seen with the 9/11, the GI Bill, is we have to go back and try to fix it. And most staff, most offices are understaffed, and as much as I would love to spend all of my day working on survivor issues, my boss is a senator, the senior senator for Louisiana, and we had an oil spill happen this year. So our office has been a little busy, and we're unfortunately not able, and it's not just our office, it's every office, plus there's this thing called an election coming up. So people are crazy, running around, so the easier you can make it for the staff to understand, educate the staff, get them to understand, because these young kids, most of the people on the Hill, are not affiliated with the military. We don't have many members who are former military. So it's really, on your part, is just educating them, making them understand, like with SBP DIC, that Senator Nelson has 60 co-sponsors, that Representative Ortiz has 352 co-sponsors, but it's not going anywhere. Senator Nelson has an amendment for the National Defense Authorization Act, which is not going to go anywhere this year. Contrary to what you're hearing, nothing's going to happen the rest of the year. That's just my little insider tidbit to you. So I'll be here. I guess are we still doing a Q&A? If we have time. And I have tons of cards. I'm happy for people to email me, call me, ask me specific legislative questions. But the main thing is just really educate your senator staff, your congressman staff, and make sure they understand if you put in family, you're left out if you're a survivor. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jones. Our next panel discussion, Understanding Military Loss, Aspects of Grief in Children and Adults. We have two absolutely wonderful panelists who will be talking to us about, first, the surviving spouse and author, Joanne Steele. Ms. Steen is a nationally certified counselor and the founder of Grief Solutions, and has trained over 6,000 military and civilian personnel on the best ways to respond to families of America's fallen warriors. Also joining her is Ms. Jill Harrington Lamore, a surviving spouse, who is a licensed social worker and director of professional education and training for the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors here in Washington, D.C. She is currently completing her doctorate at the University of Pennsylvania, and the focus of her doctorate research is death in the United States Armed Services, its impact on survivors, and the efficacy of peer-based emotional support. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our two panelists.
The microphone always has to go up for me. This is a letter to Ephraim D. and Phoebe Ellsworth, mother and father of Colonel Elmer E. Ellsworth. My dear sir and madam, in the untimely loss of your noble son, our affliction here is scarcely less than your own. So much of promised usefulness to one's country and of bright hopes for oneself and friends have rarely been so suddenly dashed as in his fall. In the hope that it may be no intrusion upon the sacredness of your sorrow, I have ventured to address you this tribute to the memory of my young friend and your brave and early fallen child. May God give you that consolation which is beyond all earthly power. Sincerely, your friend in a common affliction, Abraham Lincoln, 16th President of the United States, May 25th, 1861. Since 1775, men and women of the United States have raised their right hand under oath to serve in this nation's military. Soldiers solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. In doing so, they put themselves in harm's way, engaging in high-risk activities that have the potential for grave physical and psychological injuries. War is a high-risk activity, and as history continues to teach us, war, violent death, is a risk of war. Whether in peacetime or at war, the dangers of military service also pose a high risk of exposure to trauma, loss, and grief for surviving families and survivors affected by the death of a soldier. Good afternoon. My name is Jill Harrington Lamore, and I am the Director of Professional Education and a peer mentor at the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. And if you don't know anything about TAPS, let me briefly tell you that for the past 16 years, TAPS, which was started by a military Army widow, who in her own grief and suffering turned around and wrapped her arms around a community of folks to provide a network, a sustaining network, a lifelong network of those survivors who can help other survivors heal throughout their lifetime and live with the grief, love, and loss of their loved one in their lives. That's what TAPS does, peer-to-peer support. I am here today with my colleague, Ms. Joanne Steen, a fellow survivor, counselor, instructor, presenter, and author on military loss. And we'd like to thank SOS for inviting us here today to address this very timely and difficult subject, a very realistic hazard of military duty, and that is death. And for every soldier who dies, there are survivors impacted by his or her death. Also, on behalf of TAPS and Grief Solutions, we'd like to thank SOS for the work you do every day to help diminish the challenges and suffering faced by survivors. It takes a community of care. And like Colonel McLaughlin said, it's partnership. It takes a community of care to help those suffering from the death of a soldier, both short-term and long-term. And we thank you all for your commitment to honor the lives of soldiers who have served and died by caring for their survivors. Their legacy lives on. Given that